Want any problems with Ms. Sweetlove? We have schools in the black community across this country that have not performed for 10, 20, 30, and 40 years.
Right.
When are we going to shut those schools down? And what is your plan to shut them down?
You know, the point that you're making is right on, because the reality is we're not perfect. If we have schools that are not performing, if we have teachers who are not delivering, if we have principals who are not performing, if we have school boards that are being ineffective, then we need to embrace those changes, because if we don't lead that change, then we'll be swept away. And so if in fact, you're right, if we have communities that children are trapped in schools that are not giving them what they need, that are failing, then those schools need to be closed. That change needs to be brought forward, and we need to give those children the opportunities it needs to be. I simply believe that the charter school experiment, and that's what it is, an experiment, has many wonderful schools that are doing great things, but it has just as many, if not more. In fact, I believe there are significantly more that are failing, but they're failing without the transparency that we demand of public schools. So if in fact we have communities that are not being served, we must make the change, but we must lead the change.
Let's give David a round of applause. My panel is pushing me because I'm pushing them to ask shorter questions. We have to end this the same night that we started. I'm gonna let you ask whatever you want, Chair. Our next presenter is Ms. Malik Anderson, and she is Superintendent of the Achievement School District. Those of you that are not from Tennessee did not know that a few years ago, our legislature put out a bill that says those schools that were in the lower 5% of achievement could be taken over by a central district and could be run by that district. Malik is, I think, the second director of that of this particular district. She has promised me that she will not allow the same thing to happen to her that happened to the previous one, because he had a heart attack. That's right. But Malik is doing some innovative things with the Achievement School District, and we want her to present to us.
Thank you, Ms. Sweetlove. Good evening. Good evening. Madam Chair and Education Task Force members, I want to thank you for initiating this conversation here in Tennessee. I think that you will find that a lot of the experiences that you spoke to as the impetus for your charter moratorium are actually quite different here in Tennessee. And so I will share some of the differences as it specifically relates to the Achievement School District and how we've leveraged charter partners to begin to improve the state's lowest performing schools. And I will provide a copy of my remarks, so you'll have them all written down for you later on. The Achievement School District is a turnaround district designed to serve priority schools, which are schools in the bottom 5% statewide. From its inception, the ASD was never meant to be a replacement district, but instead a companion district, a catalyst for improving school and student progress with partner school districts across the state. As you'll see in a minute, the needs of students, schools, and districts across Tennessee is too great for us to take a one-size-fits-all approach to school improvement. All hands on deck with local school district managed schools, state district managed schools, local district and state charter managed schools are all needed to cast aside governance labels and strengthen our collective work in service to kids. So the ASD is both a direct operator of schools, similar to local school districts in Tennessee, and we oversee nonprofit, public charter school operators who have stepped up to meet the need in partnership with our district. I think there's a false narrative out there that charters are systematically creaming students, somehow cherry-picking the higher-performing students without disabilities or behavior challenges. That's not widespread in Tennessee, and it certainly isn't in the ASD. Here are the student needs that charters and district-operated networks have all stepped up to serve in Tennessee's priority schools. A small percentage of Tennessee priority school students, about 4%, single digit, 4%, graduate from high school, college, and career ready. Fewer than 1 in 6 priority school students are on grade level in reading and math. 1 in 3 middle and high school students in priority schools have been suspended for unsafe behavior and other serious student actions, a number that is way too high for our students. The average ACT score for priority school students is 14.25, far below the ACT score of 21, which is the average score needed for college admission and Tennessee Promise college tuition. All priority school students, nearly all of whom are Black and Latino, deserve equal access to great neighborhood and optional schools that meet their needs. In the ASD, we serve them all. Students in priority schools with high GPAs and low ACT scores were one of the truest examples of the challenges we faced newly partnering with priority schools. It represents the confusing messaging that students and parents historically received about the on-grade readiness of their kids. What was also unfortunately true is that most parents had no idea that their child or their children's schools were in the bottom 5% of performance statewide. ASD charters and district-managed schools have willingly stepped into historical local school district gaps in communication with parents to make clear that receiving passing grades from a failing school leaves our young people unknowingly behind and ill-equipped for the futures they would choose for themselves. So, rather than limit the efforts of nonprofit charter schools who want to be partners in school communities' efforts to meet students' and families' needs, we should create pathways to support their success and hold them accountable to the same expectations of district-managed schools. The ASD's school performance framework is how we hold all of our schools accountable, both district-managed and charter-operated. We grow what works through replication, and we replace what doesn't, without regard for irrelevant governance labels like charter or district managed. They are all public schools serving public school students who deserve high quality public education held to the same accountability, funding, student service, and community partnership expectations. In the ASD and in at least one other large urban district in Tennessee, charter and district-managed schools are held accountable to the same performance framework because it just makes sense. Anyone in a district or charter organization will agree that turning around the state's lowest performing schools is difficult and worthy work. In our short 4.5 years of operating priority schools, the ASD has certainly learned a lot, and in true charter fashion, we've swiftly taken our learnings each year to get better in myriad ways. With all of our learning and continuous improvement, one of the most important achievements of the ASD is the attention we have helped to bring to low-performing schools that had languished in the dark corners and cracks of our public education system for decades. Our district and the work of the charter school operators who comprise it have helped to ignite a spark around what happens in the state's lowest performing schools. Of the 85 schools that were identified as bottom 5% in 2014, nearly all of them have finally begun to receive intervention. The unprecedented attention that we have brought to the bottom 5% of schools is resulting in unprecedented growth. I know that you will hear and you have heard the passion and concern from many of us working to support students and families. But it's not just about the words. It's also about the numbers that evidence the impact of charters and district-managed schools working together to support the success of students. Students in priority schools in Tennessee have grown 4 times faster than their peers, and grade level proficiency has increased 10 percentage points. Further, schools in the ASD, both public charter schools and district managed, have decreased suspension rates of students by 20% compared to before the schools joined the ASD. And we serve a higher proportion of students with high need disabilities relative to local school districts across the state. In conclusion, we are seeing a real commitment of nonprofit public charter schools in Tennessee to students, families, teachers, and communities through their mission-driven work to turn around the state's lowest performing schools as part of the ASD, and we thank them. Thank you.
Thank you, Malik. Pound.
I'll ask mine first, and then I'll give it to Dare. You said that you brought up the issue around cherry picking.
Right.
And I know that it's an issue in Connecticut and in other areas across the country. So little Raheem cusses out his teacher. And when he cusses out his teacher and makes threatening comments and so